The following Radio Gunk broadcast deals with subjects that some viewers might find disturbing. It is intended for mature audiences only. And now, enjoy the show.
I love that. Hi. So you're such a weirdo. So welcome to Things That Go Gunk in the Night. And tonight, Man in the Black Suit, and I will be will be discussing part 5, which is Home Sweet Home. And what we're doing in tonight's episode, which started one way, but then kind of morphed.
Hang on.
What is
Hey,
that?
knock it off.
What is that?
What do you think it is? My life's a joke.
Yes, I know this to be true.
That was my dog trying to cock block us.
X should do the show in one of his. Oh my God, you should.
In the year 2000.
You should. Okay.
Yeah, and the whole show be like, don't we have people bitching enough about the fucking audio as is? Do we really need to just?
Yeah, but I have a whole new setup now. I don't know how it sounds, but
oh my God, that looks expensive.
it kind of is. Oh my God, fucking
Ida.
Ida.
You shouldn't have.
Ida rules, just so you know. Ida Greenfield is our.
I thought you was spanking it. Well, you never know.
No, Ida's awesome. I chat with her on Instagram sometimes.
No,
She's really
Bon
cool.
Jovi, that was the German Shepherd.
Yes.
I
Hi,
love
Bon Jovial.
schnauzers.
How's our sound?
Schnauzer. Get to the schnauzer.
So what we're doing tonight is Home Sweet Home, and we originally started this as a Amityville horror /
Marilyn from Billboard.
Cecil Hotel type of show. And somehow,
thank
my
you,
God,
Shane.
thank you, Shane. Thank you so much, Shane. Appreciate that.
I don't have to donate blood tonight.
So,
Sell. Oh, donate.
so we were going to do Cecil Hotel and Amityville. And Cecil Hotel actually has to be its own show. And as I was researching haunted, creepy homes, and by the way, you guys who have PM'd me or gone into my chat on Instagram have told me amazing stories about people you grew up with who wound up being killers and homes that you know of that are supposedly haunted. So just know that I'm looking into all of that. And I'll do a lot of research on it, and maybe that'll be another show that we do.
It probably will.
Well, somebody was telling me about a house in Los Feliz in LA.
Los Felix?
Los Feliz.
Los Felix.
With an X. It's a
Feliz?
Z.
Los Feliz. Los Feliz.
Los Feliz. And it's a crazy story. So this guy moved in with his family in the 60s and I guess had money problems and all sorts of shit going on. And I guess for the insurance decided to kill off his family. And his daughter, who was 18 years old, woke up and held her head and saw that there was blood all over it and saw her father above her with my favorite instrument of torture, a ball-peen hammer. And he was beating her about the brain with this hammer. And she pushed him away, grabbed her little sister, and ran out of the house. And by the time the cops came, the mother was dead and the father had killed himself. So, P.S., gorgeous house, 5,000 or 6,000 square feet, lots of space, beautiful, mission style kind of Spanish house that they love in Los Feliz. And
As opposed to those doggy style homes.
yeah, yes, exactly. And so the house was purchased the next year by a Spanish family, and they never moved in. So this is in the mid 60s sometime. And the house stayed vacant from the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, into the 90s. The family owned that house and never did anything to it. And rumor has it that the Christmas tree that the first family had with the Christmas gifts underneath the tree were still in the house.
Dang.
All their possessions, all their clothing, everything. Then those two die. They leave it to their son. He never moves into it. And so another 10 or 15 years go by with the house still empty and completely abandoned. So he dies and has no children or family. So the estate decides to go ahead and sell the house. So they sell it for $2.5 million. And they sold it to Gloria Allred's daughter, Lisa Bloom, and her husband. And they started to take it down to the studs, like completely demolish everything that was inside of it. But apparently, because the house was so old and needed so much work, it had to be up to code for everything, like handicap accessibility
Yep.
and like all that bullshit. And she was like, you know what? It's not even worth it. It's so much money. I'm not even bothering. And yeah. And so they sold it for like $3.5 million, and now somebody has to redo it from scratch. But it literally laid with, and there's pictures online of people who have snuck into it over the course of years, where there's still magazines sitting there from like 1967 and newspapers from like
Sears
1968. Yeah, just crazy shit. I love shit like that. I'd like to do a whole show on abandoned homes. I love that. All right, so we're gonna get into what are we starting with? Amityville?
I believe so.
All righty then. Yeah, let's get into this fucked up family.
The
So
DeFeo Murders.
DeFeo.
DeFeo. Classic
DeFeo.
Italian name.
Yeah, nice gindaloons. All right, so let me throw this up here. And we are going to start with the Amity house. So Amityville is a suburb in Long Island. The original address was 112 Ocean Avenue. Yeah, were you going to say something, babe?
Absolutely not.
Oh,
I was going to
okay.
say southern Long Island, but okay.
I don't know what that means because it's just a long island. Yeah, so the DeFeo family were, here we go. Here's the lovely DeFeos. So we'll come to the father and mother in a moment, but you have Ronald, which is right here, who was known as
23.
Butch. He's 23 years old. Then you have Dawn, who's right here, who is 18 years old. Then you have Allison right here, who is 13 years old. Then you have Mark, 12, and John Matthew, 9. So that would give you the DeFeos other than Joseph and Louise. So let's scroll on a little bit.
Man, people didn't pull out back then, did they?
No, they clearly didn't. Classic gindaloons.
Yeah.
So Joseph DeFeo Sr., at the time of his death, was 43 years old. They were very big, like many Gindaloon families, of doing, oil paintings of themselves and their family. I can't even imagine that somebody would do an oil painting of their son and themselves pouring a martini or something weird like that.
Yeah, what is that? It's like it's the I
Shit.
Dream of
Yeah,
Jeannie bottle
totally
into a
big
goblet.
pussy, Dorian Morgan. It totally looks like big pussy. That's exactly right. So the DeFeos were a curious group. So Louise DeFeo, who is the mother, came from a very wealthy family, and they owned a bunch of auto dealerships. I don't know that the DeFeo auto that you may know if you live in the tri-state area is related to them, but she married Joseph DeFeo, and I believe that Ronald, the son, aka Killer, was was conceived out of wedlock. So, being the good Catholic family that they were, they decided to get married. They lived in a small apartment in Brooklyn, and the father that you see right there worked for a Buick dealership in Brooklyn, where his father-in-law was the owner, and he was the service manager. Okay, I'm just giving you the build-up to who the fuck these people are. Okay, there's the mother. So that would be Louise DeFeo. That's a striking oil painting of her.
Isn't it?
I don't
It
think
looks
she
like the
looked
one
even
from
close to that.
Seinfeld.
So Louise DeFeo was 42 years old, and yeah, birthed what, 4 or 5 children?
I believe 5, right?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, that's Louise in reality, in the backyard. Okay, those are the 2 girls. So that would be Dawn, 18, and Allison, 13. And you'll see when we get to the murder photos that this is a oil painting that was hanging on the wall on the staircase. And then we have the little boys, and that would be Mark 12 on the left and John Matthew 9 on the right. Again, very big on these oil paintings. And there's the happy family as you would see them in the backyard in Amityville. So they lived in Amityville and they were perfectly happy there, although Joseph Sr. was known to be a little bit on the abusive side. And
Well,
yeah, go, babe.
this is
Well.
where, okay, I think everybody's familiar with the story at this point, but some of the stuff where people really try to discredit what in fact happened, it's kind of contradictory because it is said that the father was overbearing and was verbally abusive, but by the same token, like one of the kids' friends said that he would play in their house, never saw anything that resembled abuse. In fact, the famous red room in the basement, people are like, oh, it's a red room. It's really like satanic.
Red room.
Exactly, satanic and all this other stuff. But the friends said that, oh, the dad wanted us to have a play area, so he let us paint a room red. So there's nothing nefarious about that whatsoever. But if the dad was such a jolly and jovial person on that end, why is everybody, why do some people
You know what?
say he was abusive?
You never know what goes on behind closed doors. Let's be honest. So many of my friends growing up, I thought had the perfect families. And then you find out in your 20s in a, drunken stupor at a bar that so-and-so's dad was, fucking some woman when he made believe he was going out bowling, or, he has 2 kids from a different family. I mean, you just never know. You just never know what goes on in
Exactly. Like
people's
house,
homes.
The red room is not in the house plans. It's just this random. I mean, as far as I know, nothing actually happened in that room that would constitute evil or whatever. It's just this random room that the dad let the kids paint red, supposedly.
Well, it was just a little closet almost that they just kind of put their toys in and hung out in.
It was
whatever.
a little bit. No, it was bigger than a closet. 100% was bigger than a closet.
Okay, whatever you say. All right, I'm going to move on just a little, just a snurch.
Are
so I can see what else is here.
are you trying to like
you. Of
trivialize
course I'm not.
Satan? And not only that, it says high hopes. That is actually what the family, the family did that. They called their little piece of the American pie high hopes.
Right. So they lived in a small apartment in Brooklyn while he was still. Yeah. See, Nancy says there was a DeFeo Cadillac Central Avenue in Yonkers. I'm pretty sure it was the same family. You're probably right, because I always remember the DeFeo auto dealerships growing up. Okay, so what happened was apparently he was actually abusive. It is known that the wife told people that he hit her and things like that. And when they bought this house, actually, her father put the down payment for the home, and she had left him once before. And when they got back together, this was their new start, hence the name High Hopes. And this was in hopes that they would have a better life being out in the suburbs as opposed to being in Brooklyn. And of course, in classic Gindaloon fashion, the house had a statue of, I think it's Jesus, and kids playing all around the fountain.
Isn't that John the Apostle?
Oh, it could be. I don't know. I
I'm
just made that
kidding.
up.
I just thought I'd throw that out there. It sounded legit when I said it.
Okay, so this was their beautiful new home, and this is where they were going to live their lives. But
a
here
nice
we
house.
had, it's a beautiful house. I have some pictures. Hold on, let me move up a little bit. Let me see what I have going forward.
Except for the satanic eyes staring at you. It's so lovely.
Okay, there's Jesus on the half shell, because
Yes.
every Gundaloon needs to have
It's like
that at their
touchdown
home.
Jesus.
Yeah, touchdown Jesus. Okay, look how beautiful that house is. So yeah, beautiful. They're right on a
great
canal that
location.
leads out into the Long Island Sound. This is a gorgeous, gorgeous boathouse in the back of the property. Had a huge pool right behind it. So it's dream. It's just the dream home for somebody to raise the family in.
Yes.
Yeesh.
It is classic suburbia.
Indeed, it is. All right, I'll play a little bit. Okay, so then terror strikes. So let's go through the story of what happened well, let's go back a little bit. So Ronald DeFeo was known as Butch. Butch was 23 years old, still lived at home, and had gone through a series of basically being a fucked up kid. They sent him to a psychiatrist, and it didn't work for him. And he wound up dropping out of high school. But instead of helping him any further, they decided to just basically give him whatever he wanted.
Didn't they give him a job at the dealership as
Wait,
well?
they bought him a $14,000 speedboat so that he'd have something to go play with out on the water. And then his grandfather gave him a job at the Buick dealership at 18, making $500 a week, which I think is a lot of money back in the 1970s. And it was basically like the mafia was a no-show job. He could either come in, he didn't come in, didn't even matter. They still paid him $500 a week because they thought that that would just keep him kind of sated and he would be okay. So by the way, age of 17, yeah,
That's a good scratch in the early 70s.
I know shit. It's a lot of money. We'd be happy to make that in Google Ads.
That's what. Yeah. Sorry, I don't want to depress people, so I'll move on.
Yeah. So Butch was basically a drug addict. He was hooked on LSD, heroin. He was expelled from school. The day his family was murdered, he'd been drinking scotch all day. He had been shooting heroin. And his parents really didn't do much about it. At one point when he was working at the dealership, he shockingly was in charge of delivering money over to the bank for a deposit. And he made up the story about how him and his friend were held up and all the money had disappeared and he didn't know what happened to it. And his grandfather basically just let it go. just a little bit more about the house. It's so Amityville is on Long Island. It's about 30 miles outside of New York City. And it was a three-story Dutch colonial, which was built in 1927. And the DeFeos moved in 1965. It had a great front yard. It had, it's just a beautiful property. The pool had a slide in the back, faced the canal, absolutely gorgeous. So let's go to that fateful day. Do you want to add anything, my friend?
So now we fast forward to November 13th. Is it 1974?
Is it? Yes, 1974.
In the wee early hours of that evening, around 3 o'clock in the morning, Ronald Jr.
Butch?
Butch used a 35 caliber Marlin rifle, which is pretty loud weapon, probably be on the equivalent of a shotgun blast, kind of like the old Winchester rifles that you saw in like the Rifleman, and using 9 shots, murdered 6 family members.
Well, we don't know that yet. So basically, what happened, well, is that Butch went about the day as if it was a normal day. He woke up early. He left for work at like 6:30 or 7 o'clock in the morning. A guy who was walking past the house that day happened to notice, super early, happened to notice the lights on upstairs and heard the dog barking, but didn't think anything of it. Just thought, kind of curious that, they'd be up and about so early in the morning. So Butch went off to work and started his day early, actually, before the place was even open. And later on in the day, he went to his favorite local bar and started drinking and was telling everybody at the bar that he forgot his keys, so that's why he came here instead. And at some point decided to go on home. And I guess he broke a window, weirdly enough, to get into the house. And maybe like a half hour later, he comes back into the bar and says, "Oh my God, you guys, I think my parents are dead. Something really bad happened. You got to help me. I think my parents are shot." And everybody's like, "The fuck are you talking about?" They're all drinking, hanging out at the bar. It's midday. So him and like 5 of his friends pile into his car. His house, by the way, was a block away from where the bar was. So I'm going to read to you the story about what happened at that time. I'm just going to scooch through our video just a little bit so that we can look at the family. Okay. Oh, so cute. Okay, so the house was quiet except for the barking of Shaggy, the DeFeo sheepdog. This is when they were taking Shaggy out of the house. He was so upset. He was tied up inside the kitchen's back door. And because he wasn't totally housebroken, he was still a puppy. The family usually tied him up back there. So a couple of the guys ran into the house and they went up the stairs. And I'm going to see if I can follow this. Hopefully I have it. All right, so here's the inside of the house. So they walked in. This is the classic Gindaloon living room. And there's that picture. So they walked up the stairs, and what they smelled was this overpowering smell of death in the house. And yeah, this is kind of what they ran into. I'm giving you the layout of it so that you can understand where everybody was in the house at that moment. So let's move forward a little bit. And so when his friends went into the parents' room, which is this one, this is the parents' room. Yeah. So there were his father and his mother, who were both shot once, is it, Xavier? I'm not even really sure.
He 9 shots. I think he obviously used more than one on Dad. But yeah, it's a 35 caliber bullet. It's a pretty powerful bullet that's gonna make a nice little hole in you.
So let me read the account as it was online. His friend Bobby stopped at the doorway to the master bedroom and hit the light switch. Before him lay Ronald Joseph DeFeo Sr., 43, and his wife Louis DeFeo, 42. A hole in the center of DeFeo Sr.'s bare back was the first indication that the couple was not sleeping. Dried blood had trickled out of the wound, disappearing beneath the obese man's blue boxer shorts. In contrast, Louise DeFeo's wounds were not clearly ascertainable because her body was buried beneath an orange blanket, as if she were protecting herself against the evening chill. Behind the bed was a mirrored wall which eerily reflected the macabre scene. Seeing that Bobby was ready to pass out, the other men led him downstairs, past the life-size portraits of the family that hung on the staircase walls. John Altieri remained on the second floor and checked out the northeast bedroom. Clipper ships, cannons, and eagles dotted the room's wallpaper. On the dresser to the left of the door laid several statues and figurines that one would expect to find in a devout Catholic home. Strewn across the floor were athletic shoes and toys, signaling that the bedroom belonged to a boy. 2 boys, to be exact. And I will scroll on. So they came into the boys' bedroom, which they shared. On the opposite sides of the room lay the bodies of 2 young boys. Face down, just like their parents, in the bed on the left was the body of John DeFeo, who was 9 years old. Altieri could not pinpoint the bullet hole in John's back, since the Knicks sweatshirt he was wearing was covered in blood. In the other bed lay John's brother, Mark DeFeo, 12. Next to Mark's bed was a pair of crutches and a gray wheelchair. The boy had recently suffered a football injury and needed their assistance to get around. At the foot of his bed laid a crumpled-up green and yellow bedspread and an orange blanket. This time, Altieri could make out the wound, a single bullet hole to the center of the boy's back. Seeing more than he wanted, Altieri left the room and rejoined the others on the ground floor. Then they called 911, giving details to an emergency operator. All right, go ahead, sweetheart.
Okay, because I know we're kind of Wikipediaing this, but I'd like to, some of the things that don't add up to this murder is the fact that this boy had in fact suffered a sports injury, and the nature of the injury made it extremely uncomfortable for him to lie on anything other than his back.
Right.
So the fact that he is face down like everybody else in the family is kind of really creepy, because once again, it's a 35 Marlin rifle. It's super loud. The fact that everybody was lying face down dead means that they either didn't hear the other people being murdered, which is extremely unlikely, or he had them all lie face down and executed them.
But that's weird. Like, how?
It is weird. That's the whole point of this whole
I
podcast.
know.
Is that this isn't just about some corny ass movie in the 70s, but it's just the fact that there's just a lot of weird little tidbits about this that don't really make sense. Once again, we talked about how the neighbor heard the dog, the sheepdog,
Barking.
barking. We're talking about quiet suburbia in the middle of the night. The fact that nobody heard 9 shots from that loud rifle that basically sounds like a shotgun is weird. I mean, could have everybody been just sound asleep at that time? Possibly, right? I mean, but nonetheless, it's really peculiar that nobody heard the murders.
Yeah. All right, so that's the 2 sons. Then they call the cops. They call 911. And when the police finally arrived, they were yet to discover that there were additional dead bodies in the house. So the next one they came upon was Dawn. And Dawn also was under her covers, laid on her stomach. Yeah, Fudgicle, I'm going to come back to this in one quick second. I'll post what you're saying in a moment. So Dawn was also laying on her stomach. One would think she was sleeping. And then the last one that they found was Allison. And obviously also on her stomach, face in the pillow, and just basically bleeding out. So Fudgicle is saying on the thread here, a new theory is that the oldest sister helped Butch murder the family, then Butch murdered her. I don't believe that for a fucking second.
That is an actual theory, though. People have actually said that is a distinct possibility.
Yeah, but the dude himself, Butch, has changed his story like 40 times. You know, okay, so when the cops came to the house, I don't want to leave it on this picture
Who's
because
this
it's really
Duante
disturbing.
24 that's trying really hard? Dude, learn to type first before you're going to type shit like that.
What do you say?
Nothing. He's being a fucking cunt. So, whatever.
The lazy co-host is a dickhead. Wow.
It sounds like Chuck Glass.
Okay, fuck him. This is Butch's room, and if you'll notice, Butch's room is the one that had those signature glass-paned windows that looked outside. So when the cops came to the house, Butch would not go into the home, and he's like, "Yeah, no, I'll stay out here. I don't really want to go in there and see what's going on." So the cops took him in for his own safety because the thought was that it was a mob hit. And, you know, that they were taking him in for his own safety. But when they started searching through the house, they saw boxes for the gun that he used as well as another rifle. So when they finally interviewed him about the murders, he admitted to it. He's like, yeah, it was me. I did it. And he then led them to where the gun was and where he had left the shell casings and everything. So after they arrested him, so he actually showed them or told them where he left that. And they found it exactly where he said it would be. So after he admitted to it, years later is when he said, I did it with my sister. She was hanging out with us downstairs and we were all getting high. And she said, I hate daddy and he sucks and he's so abusive and we should kill him. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know how that story kind of works out.
It's kind of like the next door neighbor that played with the kids, and the dad was a very, very religious kind of guy. He was one of these, very strict, spare the rod kind of guys. But
right.
But I don't think anybody really ever saw any sort of abusive behavior towards his family. So
not outwardly, but you don't know. I mean,
I do know that the murderer was a drug addict. So I think that maybe his perspective might have been a little skewed.
A little skewed. Agreed. As the autopsy, let me start again. As the autopsies were being conducted, a timeline of the murders began to develop, indicating that the victims had been killed sometime in the early morning hours. So they pegged it at around 3:15. And per Butch's statements, he would have been home at that time. Autopsies, and he also said when he admitted to the killing that he drugged them, and that's why nobody moved and nobody said anything.
Oh, there
But
you go.
after they did the autopsies, they found no drugs in their systems. Early speculation was that the family had been drugged in some way, possibly from something they ate. That would explain how no one seemed to move from their beds when the shooting started. However, there were no drugs found in the victims. Equally as puzzling, as Xavier has said, was that none of the neighbors heard 8 shots from a high-powered rifle that morning. All the neighbors would report that, yes, they heard the DeFeo's family sheepdog, Shaggy, barking. And that wasn't an unusual occurrence because apparently Shaggy used to bark a lot. Looking at the victims' stomachs, contents showed that there was a period of time between when the victims last ate and when they died. And so they pegged it at somewhere in the early morning hours of November 13th. So he was there. He was home. He went to work at like 6:30 in the morning. So he clearly was there when the shootings occurred. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know. Let's
It's
move
one of
on.
those. It's one of those things that like we'll never have the answer to because pretty much everybody's dead.
Well, he's dead too. He actually
Yeah, I
just
mean,
passed away this year, right?
Yeah. Pretty much everybody involved in this is dead at this point, or like 80 years old. So
Exactly.
I mean,
yeah.
was it a murder? Yes, obviously. Was it a drug addict doing the murders? Absolutely. And was he trying to save his ass when he went on trial? Absolutely. But it still doesn't explain why some of this stuff, nobody picked up on it sooner than they should have.
It's just like any of these murders.
Yeah,
it's so weird. So one time I was here in Pennsylvania and I was by myself and I was walking my dog. And next door, there were 2 police cars. I'm like, oh, that's kind of curious. So, of course, Reacher immediately goes over to them because he needs to have scritches. And the police say, had you noticed this white Jeep or whatever in the last couple of days? Because we're here for a wellness check. I'm like, no, I didn't see that. Matter of fact, I'm just noticing it now. It's literally next door to me. And turns out the guy had been there for like 4 days with that truck sitting outside. And I just never took note of it. So it's just kind of curious, the things I think that people don't pay attention to.
Would you have noticed if you heard 9 shots coming from the next
Wouldn't
door?
have thought twice about it. I'm in the woods. Guns go off all the fucking time. Like I
And I think that's
probably
your
wouldn't
answer.
have thought about it.
You are not in suburbia.
No, I'm in zombie
You're not in
apocalypse
like
land.
Trackhomeville,
No.
where if someone plays that radio a little too loud, someone's going to complain about it.
Yeah.
That's where these people live. So
Yeah, I
it's-
guess you're right.
So it doesn't add up. I mean, there's obviously a logical explanation for it.
Yeah.
Satan, that would explain it, but nonetheless, it's still one of those things that we'll never know the answer to.
So let me button up Butch for us for a moment. After his confession, he had a 6-week trial focused primarily on why he murdered them. He had a court-appointed lawyer who was trying to mount an insanity defense. In 1992, DeFeo claimed that the lawyer wanted him to do an insanity defense because he wanted to make money off of book or film deals, which is going to lead us into the Lutzes momentarily. DeFeo's trial began October 14th, 1975. He and his defense lawyer mounted insanity pleas, with DeFeo claiming that he killed his family in self-defense because he heard voices plotting against him. Could be the heroin. Not sure.
I believe his actual story was that in that night, a cloaked woman handed him the Marlin rifle, and the rest is good night.
Yeah.
I
The
mean,
ins-
clearly it's insane, but that's, I mean, as long as we're talking about his defense, that's actually what he claimed happened at 3:15.
The psychiatrist for the prosecution maintained that although DeFeo was a user of heroin and LSD, that he had, quote, antisocial personality disorder and was aware of his actions at the time of the crime. On November 21st, DeFeo was found guilty of 6 counts of second-degree murder. Judge sentenced him to 6 sentences of 25 years to life. DeFeo was held at Sullivan County Correctional Facility in Fallsburg, New York, until his death. All of his appeals and requests to the parole board obviously had been denied. He also married 3 times while he was in prison. He died at 69 on March 12th of this year. Official cause of death has yet to be determined, and I was too lazy to kind of look it up, so it may have been told to us by now, but who knows. Which leads us into the Lutzes, Xavier.
See,
So the Lutz
just out of
family-
curiosity,
yeah.
I mean, we all know what actually happened, but why do you think he did it? I mean, he didn't seem to have any I mean, money wasn't an issue since he was basically living for free, getting 500 bones a week in the early 70s. He didn't seem to have anything to gain by actually doing what he did. So, I mean, I know you don't know, but why do you think he did it?
I think the LSD might have played some.
Like that?
I don't know from LSD. I've never done it.
Neither do I.
But I know that it's something that causes delusions. I do believe that the father was probably a little bit on the abusive side. There is definitely a story
Still.
of the father hurting or hitting the mother, and Butch went up to him with a rifle and literally shoved it against his temple and shot the gun, and the gun misfired and the bullet didn't come out, and it freaked the shit out of the father, but yeah, he was willing to kill him for his mother's safety. So who knows, maybe there was a huge fight that night, maybe, but to kill the whole family
exactly. I mean,
is
the
issue.
Kind of makes sense if you off your old man if he's that abusive. I mean, burning bed type of stuff, but to kill your little kid brothers and sisters,
kill a 9-year-old. I
Yeah,
mean,
it's-
how do you do that?
That's some devilish type of shit right there. I mean,
Absolutely. I mean, but you look at like the Menendez brothers. Kill the father if he's abusing you, if he's hurting you, if he's hurting the mother. Why would you kill the mother? Like, why would you?
Maserati.
Well, right. Why would you kill them both? It just doesn't make sense. Yeah, Fudgico just mentioned that the Menendez brothers made a similar claim that they knew their parents were planning to kill them to keep the child abuse from going public. I don't believe any of that bullshit.
Obviously.
Yes, absolutely. What do you mean LSD isn't a hard drug, Casper? Home for Wayward Girls, which is a bizarre name, but okay,
It's
I'll
actually
buy
pretty
it.
awesome.
It is. It is awesome.
I mean,
Isn't LSD kind of crazy? I mean, didn't we watch plenty of after-school specials
Yeah, those were
where
accurate.
somebody takes LSD and then like jumps off the roof of a fucking building?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, honestly, the only thing that would even begin to make sense is that he didn't want any witnesses, but that's still kind of that's screwed up on so many levels.
So many levels. So here we are, House of Murder, right?
Yeah.
Enter the Lutzes. Now, remember that this murder, what's the date that he killed everybody? November
November
13th,
13th.
1974. Okay, he was convicted on November 21st, almost a year to the week, in
We're
1975.
almost on that anniversary.
Okay. In December 1975, George and Kathy Lutz and their 3 children moved into the house at 112 Ocean Avenue in Amityville. And the thing that drives me crazy about this, and I spoke to Xavier about it as well, is that when the Lutz moved in, and by the way, they bought it for $80,000, they bought all the furniture. They bought all the DeFeo furniture that was still in the house for an additional $400. So, here, according to a book, the furniture that had been in the house when Ronald committed the murders reportedly came with the house when the Lutzes bought it. It wasn't included in the $80,000 offer they made, but an additional $400 was a comparatively small price to pay for it.
Wow.
So the Lutzes sprang for it. According to some sources, it was still in the exact same places it had been in on the night of the murders.
What's the time span between the murders and them buying the house?
Yeah, so he was convicted in November of 75, which was almost a year to the date. And they bought the house in December of 1975. So it was
wow.
a year. So he had gone to jail, and I guess the house laid fallow for a year. And then once he was convicted, maybe her dad put it up for sale and probably wanted nothing to do with it or didn't want to see anything that was in the house. So they sold it exactly as it was, which I find bizarre. Like, who the fuck would buy a house where 6 murdered people were in that home?
Some
I
bad
just don't
juju.
get it. That is bad juju. So the crazy thing about the Lutzes, which maybe you want to talk about a little bit because you know more about them than I do.
December 18th, the Lutz moved in, and they they bought the house as is with all the lovely murder memorabilia still inside of it. Well, they only lived in the house for 28 days. In that 28 days span, they claimed that their daughter began talking to an imaginary person that was in the house that they couldn't see. The mother claims that on numerous occasions she saw red eyes staring at them from outside the windows, which people deduce is probably a cat. But nonetheless, as hokey as it might sound that they were seeing paranormal activity inside their homes, they left 28 days with every worldly possession that they owned still in the house.
Right.
The bank eventually repoed the house, obviously, because they didn't live there, didn't make any payments. So they left everything they had.
Just the clothes on their back.
And
That's
just
what they
literally
left.
left in the middle of the night, freaked out, saying that they were having paranormal experiences. And yeah, Jody the pig, correct? That is correct.
What's Jody the pig? What are we talking about?
Jody the pig is the pig that they saw outside the window. At least that's the name they gave it. They had a priest come in famously to bless the house. The priest, as we all know, said he heard voices telling him to get out, and so he did. There's a famous scene in the original Amityville where the priest is covered by flies. How much of that is embellished, you can decide on your own. But the priest died going to his grave, saying that what he heard that day was, in fact, what he heard. It wasn't any bit of imagination or anything like that. So it's a crazy 28 days.
These two that you're looking at on your screen right now were ghost hunters, I guess, right? I mean, that's what you would
Yes.
call them.
Paranormal people.
Right. And they went to the house because the Lutzes had said, so much crazy shit is going on in there. And, we had to leave the Warrens. Thank you, Pella. I knew Pella would know that. And they took this famous picture, which is, supposed to be a little boy who everybody assumes is little John Matthew, age 9, who was killed in the house. Because at this point, nobody was living in the home.
Now, that picture can be found readily all over the internet. It's pretty famous. But what I learned recently is it's actually a series of like dozens of pictures. They had a camera, I believe, set up on an intervalometer on sticks, and as you can see in that picture, there's a picture of what looks like a boy, but the rest of the pictures is just people walking in and out around the house. It was taken by the paranormal people, and it is what it is, right?
Well, what are they saying this is? Like, what's the word on this?
It's a boy staring at the camera. So, does it look like one of the sons? I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know. He kind of does, but you've seen 1,000,001 Photoshop ghost pictures, but this is clearly way before that. So I don't know.
Yeah, but they used to do fairy pictures back in the
Obviously
20s.
double exposure and all this other stuff.
Exactly. So that beget the Amityville horror, and what was to come of that house. And anybody I know who lived in New York at the time absolutely took a trip out to that house.
Oh, yeah.
We absolutely had to see where the Amityville horror was filmed. Although, in reality, it wasn't filmed there. It was filmed at a house in New Jersey that had a similar structure to it. This is the son. This is the elder Lutz son, who claims to this day that absolutely everything that his parents said happened was true, and that he still has nightmares about it, and feels that they were kind of misrepresented in terms of what happened and how they felt and what was happening in the house.
It is definitely Hollywood embellishing, even on the book itself.
Yeah.
But,
So this is the house back in the day, and this is what it looked like when we all probably went there to take a look at it, because you could just drive by and see it. And I think at the time when we went to see it, we all grabbed whoever was 16 and could drive at the time and ran out there to go see the house. And I think the whatever the fucking sign was, Happy Thoughts, whatever, was still up there. But what you'll see now is what the house looks like now. So the entire downstairs is still exactly the same. They changed some of the fencing around, and then they changed those 2 windows upstairs because so many people were coming to see the house and see what was going on. And it was still known as the Amityville Horror Home. But didn't they change the address, babe?
it changed from 112 to 108.
Not that that stops anybody from going to see
apparently
it, to
at
be
the
honest
height
with
of
you.
this Amityville mania, because the movie it did make good money.
Yeah.
People were just literally walking up, grabbing pieces of grass, grabbing pieces of siding, taking little mementos. So I can see how that might have been a little annoying to the current owners.
Yeah.
So,
The back of it still looks exactly the same as when the DeFeos owned it. The boathouse, the windows, everything is exactly as they left it.
Yeah.
And like that. Fudgicle is asking, Mo, are there multiple Lutz sons who did documentaries? In the movie I saw, I thought the son said it was all made up. Maybe I'm misremembering. So That story was actually by the DeFeo dude who said everything that they said was made up and that the lawyers were in cahoots with that family and they decided to make up this scary story.
Oh, the Lutzes, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I don't think anybody disputes that the Lutzes embellished on, what they saw while living in that house for basically a month. But at the
Yeah.
same time, the circumstances are a little bizarre. Like they went in like balls deep with this story because they just abandoned everything, got their house foreclosed, and didn't even have so much as a book deal or anything like that. So.
Yeah, they
No,
didn't make
were-
a lot of money off of this.
No, they did not. I believe that they made a total of $200,000 off of. I believe the franchise has generated in the book about $100 million.
Right. And they died still saying that this
Yeah.
absolutely happened to them.
Yeah, you know what? I can see how they might have stuck to that story because they didn't want to be known as like these bullshit artists, which clearly they probably were.
Right.
But nonetheless, it's still kind of a weird thing to move your family into a house that soon after, a mass murder, which is
Babe,
what it was.
with the furniture.
With the
That's the
furniture
thing
and
that
everything.
kills me.
That is bizarre.
Bizarre.
So, I know people say, oh, it's all bullshit, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, that's still weird as hell.
They still moved in there and they still left within a month. Period.
Yeah.
And the claims of them having financial hardship and that's why they left is apparently not true because the Lutz family apparently has a lot of money. They were not paupers. They were not
Yeah.
poor people. So
Once again, you have a story that makes no sense.
yeah, Nancy said they changed Son of Sam's address too. It doesn't change. Yeah, of course, no doubt. Which is then going to lead us into our next story because we're going to do like a little back to back.
Double feature?
Are you good with that? You have time?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're such a weirdo. So like I said, originally we were going to do the Cecil Hotel, but I wanted that to be its own show. Instead, and not that I want to get into the Manson murders per se, but I did want to talk a little bit about 10050 Cielo
Cielo
Drive, which is the house that Sharon Tate was murdered in. And I wanted to just kind of review a little bit about the house itself, its history, and then a couple of side notes that like what became of that house, because I was kind of fascinated with it, and I just kind of told Xavier that we have to have this as part of our conversation. So we're going to talk a little bit about Cielo Drive. Beautiful, beautiful house. Cielo Drive was built in 1942. Was completed in 44, and it was for this French actress. Her name was Michelle Morgan. She moved in late 45 and was only there a year because she went back home during World War II. I highlighted out this picture because this is that famous door, which will come back time and time again as
the
we
Trent
go
Reznor
through
door.
this story. So yeah, agreed. Rest in peace, Tate House. It was really a gorgeous place. So basically, this woman stayed there until 1945. And then this guy named Rudolph Altobelli bought the house for $86,000 in 1960 and started renting the property out. So residents over the next few years included Cary Grant, Henry Fonda, George Chakiris, rock band Paul Revere and the Raiders, a bunch of other famous people. Then in 1969, Roman Polanski, who was at this point now married to Sharon Tate, decided to rent the home. So this was basically just a rental home for them. And as you know, she was pregnant at the time. And Roman had to leave and go overseas to direct a movie. So he asked a friend of his, and let me just see if I can get all the names right on this, okay? Okay, so his name was Wojciech Frykowski, and he was a really, really close friend of Roman Polanski's. He was dating Abigail Folger, who was the heir to Folger's Coffee. And Roman asked him and her to kind of come and hang out at the house because he didn't want Sharon to be by herself at the home. Also at the home at the same time was their friend, very close friend, Jay Sebring, who is this guy that you see right here. Jay was an extremely successful hairdresser. We're going to come back to him because his house has amazing history as well. Here's this poor little 18-year-old boy who also passed away that day named Stephen Parent. And then you have Abigail Folger. So these fuckwad freakheads who were under, and again, a lot of drugs involved. So you never know how that influences your ability to be a murderous bastard. You really don't. And
You think so? I know drugs kind of cloud the judgment, but I don't think Snoop Dogg's out. Oh wait, he was. Never mind. People forget that he killed the guy.
Andrew Morgan says, no joke, Charles Manson was born here in Cincinnati. His birth name was No Name Maddox. Fun fact.
Yeah,
That's
I know Manson
weird.
was his original
No
last
Name Maddox. That's weird. So his parents never gave him a first name and called him Nonami. That's really, really weird. So yeah, you know the players here: Susan Atkins, Tex Watson, Patricia Krenwickel, and Linda Kasabian. So Manson apparently wanted them to commit this heinous murder. One of the rumors has always been that the people that were renting Cielo Drive before Sharon Tate moved in was a record producer who Manson had performed for and tried to get a record contract from. And the guy basically brushed him off. And so I think they were under the impression that they were going there to kill this guy who used to live in the house, not the present members who were there.
That's correct.
Okay, so this last girl that you see at the far end here is Linda Kasabian, and she stayed in the car while the other three went in to perform their heinous acts. She actually will come back momentarily because she tried to stop them from committing these heinous murders. So here's poor little Stephen Parent. Stephen Parent was 18 years old. He had picked up a hitchhiker at some point a couple of weeks before, and it turned out that this guy was renting the guest house at the Tate home. And he found out he was like really into radios. This kid was a total nerdlinger and was very into radios, and he wanted this dude's help with something that he had been working on. The guy said to him, you know what, come by any time. You know, my door's open. You can come visit. So after work one day, he was driving his dad's car, and he told his mom that he was going to go visit this dude who was staying at the house. And, you know, he'd be home a little bit later. So these Mansons come over the fence. He's literally just leaving.
I believe before they did that, 24-year-old Tex Watson climbed up the utility pole and cut cut the phone lines. And then they are afraid that the fences were electrified or had an alarm. So that's why they came over the hedges.
Okay. All right, hold on one second because I need to let my dog come in. Give me 1 second. Talk a little bit, babe, while we look at this poor dead guy here.
I believe this gentleman actually had come to buy a transistor radio. And having gone to the guest house to look at the radio, he decided it wasn't for him, so he decided he's gonna leave, and he literally was at the wrong place at the wrong time. And
Totally.
they this Tex Watson, who was a baggage handler, believe it or not, before joining the cult, he waved him down. He literally, as he's driving to leave, he stops him. You know, like when some dude walks in front of your car telling you to stop, most people are going to stop. And he had a Bowie knife and I believe a .22 caliber gun. And the guy said, "Don't hurt me." He thought he was just going to be robbed, and well, he's dead.
Okay, so then we continue into the home. And here you have Abigail Folger and her boyfriend, Frykowski. He was the first one they came upon. He was sleeping on the couch. And here's a little fun fact. Quincy Jones, who was a friend of theirs, was supposed to join them that evening. But Steve McQueen asked Quincy Jones and Jay, who is the hair cutter who wound up dying, to come check out a rough edit of the movie Bullet. And later on, they were supposed to meet at Sharon Tate's house, and then Quincy Jones just like totally forgot about doing that, and that definitely saved his life. Yeah, they had no idea what was, gonna occur at that time. So okay, so they go past Stephen Parent, they make their way onto the property. They see Frykowski on the living room couch. Tex kicked him in the head. He asked him, what are they doing there? And Tex Watson turned to him and said, "I am the devil, and I am here to do the devil's business." And that they did, my friends. Atkins went around to gather up the other occupants in the house, put them all into the living room, and then he tied up Sharon Tate and Jay Sebring by their necks and hung them on the beams that were above the living room ceiling. And then Jay Sebring was like, "Dudes, she's 8 months fucking pregnant. Just take me, leave her." And then she even begged for her life and said, "Take me, just let me have this baby." It was 8 months old already. And, you know how horrible shit went down. So yeah, go ahead.
I believe that she said that she would willingly go with them as a hostage as long as they let her live long enough to give birth to her baby.
Right.
And at which point they could do whatever they want.
Right. So this dude wound up getting out of his ropes that they had tied him with, ran into the backyard, and then he was found and just murdered out
Butchered.
in the yard. Yeah,
butchered.
just slain. I mean, just, as bloodied as a human being can possibly be.
Anytime you stab someone a few dozen times, that's definitely rage.
Yeah, this is a clean picture of Abigail Folger, who was just slashed 28 times. Frykowski was stabbed 51 times. Yeah, here's Jay Sebring with Sharon. They used to date each other, and they stayed really, really super close friends. I didn't want to show that picture because it's really just awful live. But, here they had this little leopard skin rug. Here's Jay, and here's pregnant Sharon, just, completely mauled. So yeah. So they wanted to leave a message, and Manson had told the women to leave a sign, leave something witchy. So they took the towel that had bound that guy, Frykowski, and Adkins wrote pig on the house's front door in Sharon Tate's blood. And then they left.
Well, the whole point of this murder weren't they trying to start a race war? They were trying to be so provocative with the insinuating that this is like some sort of cultish type of sacrifice murder, and it would somehow ignite a race war. Yeah.
I don't know. I mean,
No, but no,
whenever you get to these
well,
like cultish people, and you forget Charles Manson was a fucking fidget, right? How tall was he?
Like 5 feet tall or something.
Like 5 feet tall. He was the tiniest wee person. He was a fucking midget.
Well, I mean, I know we're not going to really go into the
No.
next couple of murders, but the fact that those murders happened was directly a result of the fact that Manson feels like his people chickened out because the girl that was in the getaway car got nervous and told them that security was coming when in fact they weren't.
Right.
And so they left. And when Manson found out about that, he thought that was like they didn't finish the job, so they needed another set of victims.
But
And,
how much more could you humanly do to people?
the dude was insane.
So-
So he was trying to start a race war. So, I mean, normally people... would
Whose
start
race? They killed all white people
Okay.
with a bunch of white people.
Okay, he clearly
Oh, the cop
has
thing,
stated
pig?
that he wanted to start a race war, helter-skelter, and he wanted this to be the kind of the match on the kindling that would start it. I don't know how he expected it to pretty much pan out, but that's pretty much why we had a second set of murders by the Manson family. And once again, they scrolled, I believe they did die pig on the next one, because he thought somehow people were going to go, oh my God. I don't know if they were going to blame the murders on black people or something. I don't know. I mean, I don't know everything about the Helter Skelter murders, but that's pretty much why these people died.
So I find this picture extremely bizarre.
There you go,
So
Andrew Morgan.
Roman Polanski comes back to the United States and goes directly to the home so that he could look at the like, who the fuck would do this? Like, who would want to be right there like that? Like your wife and her child were stabbed multiple times to their death. Her best friend was right here, stabbed multiple times to his death. Why would you need like I would never want to be in that home again, ever.
Well, how do you process the fact that your significant other and your unborn are dead because they were butchered? I mean,
I know, but I would never want to see that scene.
I don't think there's a wrong way to grieve that. I think some people would agree with you 100%, and like I think the majority of people wouldn't want to see that. To have that be the last image you have of your loved one is to see them butchered, while some feel like probably need a sense of closure. I don't know.
You guys are totally right. Linda Kasabian, who had waited in the car in the drive and tried in vain to stop the killings, agreed to testify against the Manson family in exchange for full immunity. She stood in the witness box for 18 days. Her testimony was believed to be the key factor in charging Charlie with the murders. She would later move to New Hampshire, and she was hounded by the media, so she changed her name and moved west. In 2009, she did an interview with Larry King wearing a disguise and low lighting to hide her identity. So nobody really knows where she is or what she's doing now, but she clearly helped convict Charles Manson and put him away. And that's her testifying right there.
They were all sentenced. They all received, I believe, the death penalty, but soon thereafterwards, California did a whole thing where they abolished the death penalty, and anybody who had that sentence was commuted to life in prison. And the Manson members unsuccessfully tried to, make parole dozens of times.
Yeah. You always hear about it coming up. It rears its ugly head. Many of them are dead now, though, right? I mean, so
I believe the majority are dead now. I don't know
Yeah.
if there's anybody still kicking around. But
okay. So let's go into some curious things about that house. Yeah, before we get to Trent Reznor, just 3 weeks after the murders, not put off by the gruesome scenes that had taken place there, the guy who owned the place, who was renting it out, Rudolph Altobelli, moved into the property and lived there for the next 20 years. Basically, just did a little cleanup and decided this was the place for him. When talking about his home, he was quoted as saying he felt, quote, safe, secure, loved, and beauty in the house.
that's something else.
Yeah. In 1989, he would eventually sell the property for $1.6 million. The very last resident of the property was Trent Reznor, who you see right here from Nine Inch Nails. He moved into the property in 1992 and set up a recording studio there, which he called Pig, a reference to obviously the door that you just saw. He moved out in 1993, saying that there was too much history in that house for him to handle. However, bizarrely enough, what Trent Reznor wound up doing is before he left, he took that door and transferred it to his recording studio called Nothing Studios, which is headquartered in New Orleans. So he felt this need to have that part of history stay with him for forever. So the pig door is now the entrance to Nothing Studios. It's been painted, but it still looks exactly like it did in 1969 and exactly like it did in 1944 when it was originally built.
Is that like an access door to like a street, or is that like a courtyard? Do you know?
Well, it's your classic New Orleans door. You know how that looks.
Oh, absolutely,
So,
yeah.
So that's the front door to his recording studio.
Fascinating.
I know. I love that.
That's like having a Banksy access to the,
Yes. How
access to the
crazy is
street.
that?
That's quite the piece.
So, just so you can all see what wound up happening to Cielo Drive. So he got out of there, like I said, in 1994, and then the 93, sorry, and then the house was demolished in 1994. So they took it down piece by piece. Oh, this is what I wanted to show you guys. So before the house was demolished, it was just kind of curious to see what it looked like throughout the years. So this is the room where they hung Sharon Tate and Jay Sebring by the necks off of these beams to keep them stable while they basically stabbed them. So this is what it originally looked like in the house in the 1940s. And then this is what it looked like the day of the murders. You can still see ropes hanging from the beams. So this is what it looked like during the murders. And then this is what it looked like when a Altobelli guy moved in, still with the beams where the murders occurred. And then this is what it looked like when Trent Reznor finally moved in. He maintained the beams and the stone as well. So then they dismantled it piece by piece. I don't know what happened to any of the stuff that may have been in the house, but wait till you see this disgusting monster. Wait, what is Andrew Morgan saying? Trent Reznor owns...
Jeffrey Dahmer's freezer, I heard.
No, really?
Doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, that would not surprise me. I'd like to look into that. Lauren says Squeaky Frome of the Manson family lives near Utica, New York now, not far from my parents. So much for serving a life sentence. Curious. Tim Sabian's sister knows a lot too. I don't know what you're talking about, Andrew Morgan. Okay. So, you ready for what's there now? Here we go.
McMansion, I'm sure.
Oh, it's disgusting. Look at it.
Yep, there it is.
That's what's there now. That's what they made out of like that beautiful, beautiful old Los Angeles home.
I was joking.
Yeah, so that's the grotesquity that is.
Typical Hollywood abode.
It's gross. Look at all the. We always laugh about the cars in front of Howard's house, but look
Yeah.
at this shit. Look at this. 1, 2,
What a
3,
loser,
4,
no
5,
chimneys
6,
to be
7, 8,
seen.
9. Yeah, exactly. Oh, who needs a fire in downtown LA?
Yeah.
So it's just gross. So, as I was doing the research on this house, I came upon the story as its own separate entity of Jay Sebring. And Jay Sebring was Sharon Tate's absolute bestest friend. He lived in this house, and this house is in Benedict Canyon. This is 9820 Easton Drive. And it's kind of like a old house. It's Bavarian style. It was built way back in the day. I don't even think I have the date of when this house was. Oh, here it is. Property was built during the 20s. And Jay Sebring bought it in 1964. So let me tell you a little quick story about Jay Sebring. Oh, first, hang on. Let me go back to this. So Jay Sebring was a hairstylist, and it's rumored that the movie Shampoo was based on him because he was the hot, handsome Hollywood hairstylist to the stars. Total womanizer, loved Sharon Tate. And he, obviously,
Steve
you can see
McQueen.
Steve McQueen, Paul Newman.
the spaghetti guy.
He was that dude from Green Acres, whose name, like Eddie Albert, maybe. So he ran an extremely successful company called Sebring, and they did a line of shampoos. They were inclusive, obviously. They were, they hired women, which was like kind of unheard of for a men's hair salon. And so he was extremely popular. He was only in his 30s and he hit it huge. So he was like 35 years old when he was killed. Used to drive around in his hot Porsche. This is what the dude was like. He also did Batman's hair. And at one point, they needed a guy who ran a hair salon for one of the episodes. So they used him. And so he was in a Batman episode. So they
fun.
were really, really close. She dated him for 2 years. She lived in his home at 9820 Easton Drive for a little while as well. But the history of the house was really kind of creepy. Let me see how to do this. Okay, let me see what the next thing is on the video. See, so cute. That was with Roman. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about Jean Harlow, who was absolute, the biggest thing in her time. She was gorgeous. She was new to Hollywood. She was the it girl, total blonde bombshell. And she wound up marrying a guy named Paul Byrne, who also was, I think, her agent. And he was in his 40s. She was 21. And they got married. He married Jean Harlow in 1932. And he had already been living in that house. And she moved in with him. And yeah, so here's them in front of the house, the happy couple. They had a wonderful time together. And 2 months into their marriage, he goes into a back room and he just shoots himself and kills himself. and this was after being married for 2 months. He left a note, and it said the following. Hold on, I want to read it to you. Hang on. It said, "Dearest dear." Hold on. Oh, wait, let me go back a second. Sorry. Didn't mean to do that. It said, "Dearest dear, unfortunately, this is the only way to make good the frightful wrong I have done you and wipe out my abject humiliation. I love you, Paul." Then it said, "You understand last night was only a comedy." So Jean Harlow was like, I have no idea what the hell he's talking about. I know nothing about this. However, the night before his death, he had been visited by his ex-girlfriend, and it was a woman named Dorothy Millette, who Jean Harlow had no idea who she was, had never heard the woman's name, but apparently they had been a big item, and Byrne financially supported her. She apparently suffered from some mental problems. Apparently, her body was then found in the Sacramento River 2 days after Paul Byrne committed suicide. And she had committed suicide from jumping off of a steamboat that was parked on the Sacramento River. So Jean Harlow had no idea what happened, know nothing about the note, and she wound up only being married for 2 months. The weirdest thing about Jean Harlow is the fact that even though she was married to that dude at like 21, she herself passed away at 26. She was only 26 years old when she died, and she died due to kidney failure. Hold on, I'm going to mute because I have to cough. Stop that. So after he died and she left the house, it went through a couple of owners. And apparently, weirdly enough, the person who found Burns's body called the studio instead of the police. And all these bigwigs from the studio came to examine the dead body, including Irving Thalberg, who was a big film producer back then. And they all kind of said that there was some tampering with the evidence and not really sure that he actually killed himself and shit like this.
How to make it look like a suicide.
Yeah, exactly.
It's interesting. He got Keith Ledgered.
In the years after Byrne and Harlow lived in the property, it has also been reported that another suicide happened there, and then there was also a drowning in the swimming pool. So in 1963, the home was purchased by Jay Sebring, and he was already like super successful, and he was like total boy wonder in the haircutting world. So he was dating Sharon Tate at this time. So in 1967, this is the thing I found creepy about it. In 1967, Sharon Tate had a nightmare that felt so frightening and so surreal, it still haunted her a year later. So she was doing an interview with this guy for a magazine called Fate Magazine, and she thought she had a premonition of her own murder. In 1968, he asked her if she had any psychic experiences, and she told him about the nightmare. She said, "Yes, I have had psychic experiences. At least I guess that's what it was. And it was really terrible and frightening and disturbing. It happened about a year ago. Maybe you can explain it to me," she said to him. At the time of her dream, Tate was dating Jay, and she was staying at his house, and he had to go to New York for work. So obviously she didn't know about the murder or the suicide that had happened in the house, and she couldn't sleep. She said, "I had a funny feeling. The funny feeling disturbed her, and she felt like she couldn't get to sleep. She then turned on the bedside lamp and saw something stirring outside her bedroom." She said she didn't know whether she was awake or if she was asleep or if she was dreaming. She said, I saw this creepy little man. He looked like all the descriptions I had ever read about Paul Byrne. The figure then entered and dashed around the room, but it didn't make any attempts to approach Tate. Frightened, she jumped out of bed, threw on a bathrobe, and ran towards the stairs. But when she reached the staircase, the dream only got worse. I saw something or someone tied to the staircase, whoever it was, and I couldn't tell if it was a man or a woman, but I knew somehow that it was either Jay or me. He or she was cut open at the throat. She ran downstairs into the playroom and poured herself a drink. Then she heard a voice tell her to tear away the wallpaper at the base of the bar, which she did. Sharon spent a lot of time at Jay's house. She pinched herself, relieved that what she was expecting must have only been a dream. Tate then walked back up the stairs, past the figure tied to the railings, past the apparition, and back to the bed, where she quickly fell asleep. The next day, when Sebring returned, she told him about the experience, and they laughed it off as a dream. But then they noticed that pieces of wallpaper were on the ground next to the bar, and she really had tried to rip it apart. So she had a really crazy, bizarre dream in the house. Now, the weird thing about the house is that there's absolutely no pictures of it, because this kid, basically, who was in college back in the late 60s, used to drive past there all the time with his friends and was like, oh my God, I love this house so much. And then when Jay died, the parents put the house up for sale the next year. And he took all the money he had. He borrowed from his parents. He did whatever he had to do in order to buy the house. And that was in 1969. And that, again, was a house that was purchased with every single item that Jay had in the house, still in the house. And when they purchased the house, I think they closed on it in 1970. There has never been another single picture of the inside of the home to this day. These are all old pictures from when the house was for sale. But nobody has been inside. I found this video of Sharon Tate while she was still dating Jay, and this is outside by the pool and just kind of hanging out and, you know, just chilling with her guy at his house, and that's it. So yeah, so that house nobody has ever seen the inside of it. Nobody. And the same family has owned it since 1970. So it's kind of weird how these creepy little homes happen to just still exist. And apparently inside the house was a lot of like he had done a line of shampoos, he had done a shit ton of advertising, all of his stuff was in the house, and that was it. And yeah, that's all I got. That's all I got.
That's all you got?
That's all I got. That's my story.
Now, doesn't that make you feel better? The pigs have won tonight. Now they can all sleep soundly, and everything is all right.
I don't know. I just added the Sebring thing on because I just thought that, you know, she had a really creepy, horrible premonition of death whilst being in that home, which came to fruition.
Cool.
That's it.
On that note.
Yeah, that's what I got. Wow.
Yeah, I know. It's like, well, that was goddamn depressing.
Well, all I know is that Sharon Tate was a beautiful woman, and it is absolutely a goddamn shame that these monsters destroyed her and her child. I don't know. kind of weird. I'm trying to run through on some of these. Yeah, I know there's a good movie about Jay. I'm dying to watch that, so I will get to that. Yeah. What else do we have? I think that's it.
I think that pretty much wraps up this week's
Yeah,
things
I
that go
agree.
gunk in the night. I think
Manson killing shows could go on for weeks, but you know what?
yeah.
I only wanted to mention it in terms of the house history.
You could literally do an entire series on that murder and everything that led up to it, from the Beach Boys to the Beatles to the, I mean, everything is just so twisted. And yeah, you could go on forever for that. So
Well, what was the other thing we loved? Oh, haunted recording studios, which is super creepy.
yes, the
Yeah.
Houdini house,
Yeah.
Rick Rubin.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I
Blood,
want to
sex,
look into
magic.
the. Was it true that somebody wrote that Trent Reznor actually owns Jeffrey Dahmer's?
He said he was joking when he wrote that, but I wouldn't be surprised.
What about Doris Day's son? Why that? What about him? I don't know what we're talking about. A lot of people have been writing in to tell us a couple of things about. I love stories about. Some of you have told about murderers who lived in your neighborhoods, or people that were like mass killers who
Yes.
grew up, 3 doors down from you.
Well,
I
you know
love shit like that.
That there's probably a dead body in my backyard, right? I've told you
Oh,
that.
you guys!
There's a tombstone when I
There's a
bought
tombstone in his
in my
backyard.
backyard that nobody seems to know what the fuck is going on.
Who she is, when she
or what.
died.
It's just it's a gigantic tombstone. And
No,
just-
of course
just
it
the-
wouldn't be. Wait, time out, Joanna. If Sharon Tate had been ugly, it wouldn't have been a shame that she was murdered. If Sharon Tate was ugly,
I think he
I-
was-
I mean, this would be like me lamenting Toadie Field's death
Yeah, listen,
by
I
people who slashed her. But a gorgeous
She was
8-month
gorgeous,
pregnant
I think it's
starlet
irrelevant.
is something that people remember. That's all. No death is
Yeah,
without
I mean,
merit.
If that would have been Mama June, it would still be tragic.
Yeah, Nancy, I love that idea. You're exactly right. Laurel Canyon has so many good stories, and those
There
houses
is.
have so much history,
I'm very familiar with Laurel Canyon.
so many crazy things. Yeah, so I love that. All right, so anything else you want to add to this?
No, I think doing a Laurel Canyon
Yeah, I'm going to
little
make a note of
expose would
that
be
right now.
really fun. Yeah, we have seriously, there's too many demented stories in such little time. It's
I know.
yeah,
And they
I mean,
all...
the whole the whole point of these podcasts is to, it's almost like we're trying to do like a campfire chit chat for the most part.
Yeah, that's
'Cause
it.
it's there's some really good podcasts on YouTube. They're very well edited, and the imagery is just
Yeah, it's not us.
So, but I think it's so some of those you don't get that feel of that. People just shooting the shit talking about something that really fucked up happened a long time ago, and that's what we're kind of aiming for. It's gonna be not gonna be like all the buttons aren't gonna be buttoned. We're gonna just have basically chit chats about shit that
Things we
morbidly
like.
morbidly fascinates us. How's that?
Yeah, and it doesn't necessarily have to be known stuff. Like here, Pellel is just talking about hunting in Connecticut, previously a funeral parlor where they did things with the bodies. Then it became a regular house. Yeah, I love shit like that. I do.
Yeah, in the
I
butt.
do. All right.
Thank
friend.
you, Puppy Jack.
So,
I hope.
ASMR.
Here, hang on. Hey, I hope you're driving. And your eyes are so heavy, so heavy. Oh, leaning your head back. would
why
be
don't you ever do this to me to go to sleep? You suck.
Go to sleep.
Oh, you do it for the
Go
show,
to
but not for me.
sleep.
Oh, you
Close your
suck.
big bloodshot eyes.
Tony feels choked on a ham sandwich. Wasn't that Mama Cass?
That's the junk. I think that's the carpenter chick and the Mama June joke. I think it's more of a joke than anything else.
Yeah, Fudgicle, I'm absolutely going to watch that. I did see the previews of it, and I'm definitely going to watch that when we're done here.
Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you.
We enjoy doing these.
Thank you, Pooh Bear. All right, guys. So thank you for hanging with us tonight. I'm going to do a new, because I really hate my ending thing that we do on here. What? ASXR.
I love you, dickheads.
So
I really do.
don't forget to subscribe and like and hit the bell so that you know that we're having a new show. And yeah, I know these are not Howard driven shows, but we like doing them, and
Yes,
that's what
we do.
matters. And so, on the Howard front, Johnny is working on a Gary Part 2, which we need. And by popular demand, we will be doing a Eric the Midget show. I hate him, prove me wrong, basically is what it is. Okay? So, yeah, that's it. That's all we got, right, babe?
It is.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm going to go. Will we be covering any of the John Hine murders?
We you know what? That comes right after all the Mexican beheading things that we're going to cover.
Yeah, exactly.
It's
Get
on
in
that
line.
list.
Get in line.
Get
All right,
in
guys. Love you all. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
We
Thank you for
appreciate you
participating
hanging out.
tonight. Looking forward to doing more shows like this. And again, if you have any thoughts or questions or things you think that we should look into, I did make some notes as we were going through the chat tonight. So yeah. Okay. Give Bunny kisses. Good night. And I'll talk to you guys later. So.